The Battle of Queenston Heights was the first major battle in the War of 1812 and resulted in a British victory. It took place on 13 October 1812, near Queenston, in the present-day province of Ontario. It was fought between United States regulars and New York militia forces led by Major General Stephen Van Rensselaer, and British regulars, York and Lincoln militia and Mohawks led by Major General Isaac Brock, and Major General Roger Hale Sheaffe, who took command when Brock was killed. The battle was fought as the result of an American attempt to establish a foothold on the Canadian side of the Niagara River before campaigning ended. With the onset of winter, this decisive battle was the culmination of a poorly managed American offensive and may be most historically significant for the loss of the British commander. Despite their numerical advantage and the wide dispersal of British forces defending against their invasion attempt, the Americans, who were stationed in Lewiston, New York, were unable to get the bulk of their invasion force across the Niagara River due to the work of British artillery and reluctance on the part of the undertrained and inexperienced American militia. As a result, British reinforcements arrived and defeated the unsupported American forces, forcing them to surrender. Background: the United States invasion across the Niagara River was originally intended to be part of a four-pronged attack on Upper Canada's border. Strong points: from west to east, Brigadier General William Hull would attack Amherstburg through Detroit. Major General Van Rensselaer would attack across the Niagara River. Another diversionary attack would cross the St. Lawrence River to take Kingston, and Major General Henry Dearborn, the Commander-in-Chief of the United States Army, would make the major attack via Lake Champlain to capture Montreal in Lower Canada. These attacks were expected to bring the colony to its knees and ensure a quick peace. However, the four attacks on Upper Canada failed or were not even launched. Hull was besieged in Detroit and, fearing a massacre by Britain's Native American allies, surrendered the town and his entire army following the siege of Detroit. Dearborn and his army remained relatively inactive at Albany, New York, and seemed to be in no hurry to attempt an invasion. Van Rensselaer was also unable to launch any immediate attack on the Niagara Peninsula, lacking troops and supplies. Although he held the rank of Major General in the New York State Militia, Van Rensselaer had not commanded troops in battle and was not a warrior, being considered the leading Federalist candidate for the governorship of New York. Possibly hoping to get Van Rensselaer out of the way, Van Rensselaer secured the appointment of his second cousin, Colonel Solomon Van Rensselaer, as his aide-de-camp. Solomon Van Rensselaer was an experienced soldier, and a valuable source of advice to the general. Prelude: British moves. Major General Isaac Brock was both the civil administrator of Upper Canada and commander of the military forces there. He was an aggressive commander, and his successful capture of Detroit had won him praise, the reputation as the savior of Upper Canada, and a knighthood, the news of which would only reach Upper Canada after his death. However, his superior at Quebec, Lieutenant General Sir George Prevost, was of a more cautious bent, and the two clashed over strategy. Brock had hastened back from Detroit, intending to cross the Niagara, defeat Van Rensselaer before he could be reinforced and occupy Upper New York State. Prevost vetoed this plan, ordering Brock to behave more defensively. Not only was Prevost concerned by Brock's apparently rash actions, but he was aware that the British government had revoked several orders in council which affected American merchant ships, and thus removed some of the stated causes of the war. He believed that peace negotiations might result and did not wish to prejudice any talks by taking offensive action. He opened negotiations with General Dearborn, and arranged local armistices. The United States government rejected Prevost's approach, and ordered Dearborn to proceed with the utmost vigor in your operations. After giving Prevost notice of the resumption of hostilities, However, it took several weeks for this correspondence to travel between Washington and the frontier. While Brock had been at Detroit, Major General Sheaffe had been in command of the troops on the Niagara. Acting under Prevost's orders, Sheaffe had concluded an armistice with Colonel Van Rensselaer on the 20th of August, and had even gone further than Prevost's orders by voluntarily restricting the movement of British troops and supplies. Brock returned to the Niagara on the 22nd of August, to find the armistice in effect. The terms of the armistice permitted the use of the river by both powers as a common waterway, and Brock could only watch as American reinforcements and supplies were moved to Van Rensselaer's army, without being able to take action to prevent it. The armistice ended on the 8th of September, by which time Van Rensselaer's army was considerably better supplied than it had been before. The one aggressive action which Brock was able to take during the armistice was to facilitate the siege of Fort Wayne on the Maumee River, which ended in a defeat of the native attackers. American internal quarrels, even with Hull's failure and Dearborn's inaction, Van Rensselaer's situation appeared strong. On the 1st of September he had only 691 unpaid men fit for duty, but the arrival of reinforcements soon boosted his force considerably. In addition to his own force of around 6,000 regulars, volunteers and militia, Van Rensselaer had Brigadier General Alexander Smith's force of 1,700 regular soldiers under his command. However, Smith, who was a regular officer although originally a lawyer by trade, steadfastly refused to obey Van Rensselaer's orders or respond to his summons. As soon as his force reached the frontier, Smith took it upon himself to deploy his force near Buffalo, New York, at the head of the Niagara River. Van Rensselaer laid a plan for the main force to cross the Niagara from Lewiston and take the heights near Queenston, while Smith crossed the river near Fort Niagara and attacked Fort George from the rear. However, Smith made no reply to Van Rensselaer's plan. When summoned to a council of officers in early October to plan the attack, Smith did not respond, nor did he reply to a letter sent soon after. A direct order to arrive with all possible dispatch was also met with silence. Van Rensselaer, an amiable politician in a hurry to launch his attack, simply chose to proceed with the attack from Lewiston only, rather than bring Smith before a court-martial and possibly delay the start of the battle. His aim was to establish a fortified bridgehead around Queenston, where he could maintain his army in winter quarters while planning for a campaign in the spring. Colonel Van Rensselaer had visited the British side under the escort of Brock's aide, Lieutenant Colonel John MacDonald, and had gained a fairly good idea of the lie of the land. On the 9th of October, American sailors and Marines under Lieutenant Jesse Elliott launched a successful boarding attack on 2 British brigs near Fort Erie at the head of the Niagara River and captured both. Brock feared that this might presage an attack from Buffalo and galloped to Fort Erie, although he soon realized that there was no immediate danger from Smith in Buffalo, and returned to his headquarters in Niagara that night. It was mistakenly reported to Van Rensselaer that Brock had left in haste for Detroit, which Major General William Henry Harrison was attempting to recover. Van Rensselaer decided to launch an attack at 3 a.m. on the 11th of October, even though Colonel Van Rensselaer was ill. On the 10th of October, Van Rensselaer sent orders to Smith to march his brigade to Lewiston in preparation for the attack. With every possible dispatch, Smith set out upon receipt of the letter. However, in foul weather, he chose a route to Lewiston that was so bad that abandoned wagons could be seen sticking in the road. The same tempestuous weather drenched Van Rensselaer's troops as they stood and waited to embark. One of the lead boatmen, a Lieutenant Sim, rowed his boat away and deserted the army, taking with him most of the oars. By the time the oars could be replaced, the attack had to be postponed. Colonel Van Rensselaer set the second attempt for the 13th of October. Smith received word that the attack had been postponed at 10 a.m. On the 11th of October, He then turned back to his camp at Black Rock, New York, near Buffalo, rather than press on to Lewiston. He wrote to Van Rensselaer on 12 October that his troops would be in condition to move out again on 14 October, a day after the postponed attack was to be launched. Brock's preparations. Brock was aware of the failed attempt to cross the river on the 11th of October but was not certain that this was not a mere demonstration to distract him from a major attack elsewhere. On the 12th of October, Major Thomas Evans crossed the Niagara River under a flag of truce to request an immediate exchange of prisoners taken in Elliott's raid on the British brigs 3 days before. He attempted to see Solomon Van Rensselaer but was told the colonel was ill. Instead, he was met by a man who claimed to be General Stephen Van Rensselaer's secretary, Toark. Toark was probably Major John Lovett in disguise, and he repeatedly stated that no exchange could be arranged until the day after tomorrow. Evans was struck by the repetition of this phrase and spotted several boats hidden under bushes along the shore. He deduced that a crossing was planned for the 13th of October. But on returning to the British lines, a council of officers responded to his statement with laughter and mockery. However, Brock took Evans aside and after a meeting was convinced of the possibility. That evening he dispatched several orders for the militia to assemble. On the 13th of October, Brock was at his headquarters in Niagara. Major General Sheaffe was at Fort George nearby with the main British force. There were other British detachments at Queenston, Chippewa, and Fort Erie.